Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And it's good to see you all here today. So, in recent weeks, we've been discussing a seminal work in the Zen tradition, and that is the Platform Sutra, dating back to the 8th century. And I'm relying primarily on the translation by Red Pine from a manuscript that was found in the early 20th century that dates back to the 9th century, about 100 years after the Platform Sutra was written down. And it's the earliest version available. And the Platform Sutra is about the life and teachings of Wei Neng, who is a central feature in the Zen tradition. In this sutra, Wei Neng is talking about meditation and wisdom. I think it's important when reading or listening to or listening about the Platform Sutra to take it as, yes, it is about meditation, but it's not just about meditation. It's actually about much, much more. It's about the wisdom tradition in Mahayana Buddhism, about prajna. It's really about a way of life and not just a way of meditating. It's a way of being in the world that Wei Neng is pointing us toward, a way of seeing things. And at first it may seem opaque, like, why doesn't he just say it instead of all this, all these words that are confusing? Why doesn't he just say what he means? One reason is that Wei Neng is talking about something that is perhaps beyond words, that can't really be put clearly into words. So all words can do is just point in a certain direction. Much of Mahayana Buddhism makes the point that language is inadequate to explain fully reality, that language is useful, it's a skillful means, it's a way of directing, but it is not a summary of the way things are. And some of what makes the Mahayana literature seem opaque is the use of the negative, the use of no. In many cases, in English, we think about no. If there is no this or no that, we think it's just absent. It's just not there. But often in the Mahayana literature, the word no is meant in a different way. You might think of it as not absence of, but freedom from whatever is being negated. And sometimes this can all sound like just philosophical musings, but that is not it. Wei Ning was a lay person before he was he received from his teacher the bowl and robe for teaching the Dharma. And furthermore, he was a literate lay person, someone who had made a living collecting firewood. At least this is the story. And whether all of this is factually true or not is really beside the point of what it's intended to indicate. It's intended to indicate that you don't have to be a scholar to understand this or to put it into use or to actualize it, to realize these teachings. So these teachings also pretty consistently point toward the cultivation of wisdom and compassion. And cultivation is a good word because when we cultivate, for instance, in a garden, we have a seed, we have soil, we have sun, we have water. We may have, various nutrients that we apply, compost, whatever. But we're not creating really anything, actually. We're just using it, using what is already there. And likewise, in this practice, we're not really creating anything. We're not making compassion and wisdom out of nothing. We're, in a sense, realizing it, exposing it, freeing it from what keeps it bound, which in Buddhist teachings are attachment, aversion, delusion. The sort of stories that we make up, the way we divide an intact universe into parts and talk about the parts. There's a saying that the Dharma, the teachings, reality, are like the wide ocean, and the wide ocean has one taste, and that is the taste of salt. And the Dharma has but one taste, and that is the taste of freedom. And yes, meditation is emphasized. It is an important part of this tradition, an important part of this practice. But if meditation doesn't spill over into the rest of the day, it is of limited value. If zazen isn't there when someone gets angry with you, or you get frustrated, or you get alarmed, then zazen has limited value. So Zen is not a way to be a better meditator. It's a way to live a more meaningful, a more full, a more beneficial life. And meditation is a skillful means that helps us do that. So, with that, I'll be getting into a short reading that follows what we talked about in previous sessions. But as I indicated, the Mahayana literature points us toward and helps us realize, gain access to wisdom and compassion. Oftentimes there is the image of the wisdom and compassion being two wings of a bird. But wisdom and compassion are two, but there is only one bird. And we don't in English have a name for this bird. So oftentimes we use the untranslated Sanskrit words, prajna paramita, wisdom beyond wisdom, or anuttara samyak sambodhi, complete perfect enlightenment, all the same thing, the same bird. So this passage starts off this way. Good friends, since ancient times, this Dharma teaching of ours, both its direct and indirect versions, has proclaimed no thought as its doctrine, no form as its body, and no attachment as its foundation. What do we mean by a form that is no form? To be free of form in the presence of forms. And no thought? Not to think about thoughts. And no attachment, which is everyone's basic nature. Thought after thought, not to become attached. Whether it's a past thought, a present thought, or a future thought, let one thought follow another without interruption. Once a thought is interrupted, the Dharma body becomes separated from the material body. When you go from one thought to another, don't become attached to any Dharma, Dharma being a small d Dharma being an object of attention, whether that's a physical object or a mental object, a thought or a concept. Once one thought becomes attached, every thought becomes attached, which is what we call bondage. When you go from one thought to another without becoming attached to any, there's no bondage. This is why no attachment is our foundation. Good friends, no form means externally to be free of all forms. If you can just be free of forms, the body of your nature is perfectly pure. That is why we take no form as our body. To be unaffected by any object is what is meant by no thought. To be free of objects in our thoughts, and not to give rise to thoughts about objects. But don't think about nothing at all. Once your thoughts stop, you die and are reborn somewhere else. Students of the way, take heed. Don't misunderstand the meaning of this teaching. It's one thing to be mistaken yourself, but quite another to lead others astray and then to criticize the teaching of the sutras. Thus, the reason we proclaim no thought as our doctrine is because deluded people think in terms of objects, and the basis of these thoughts they give rise to, and on the basis of these thoughts, they give rise to erroneous views. This is the origin of all afflictions and delusions. When your nature gives rise to thought, even though you sense something, remain free and unaffected by the world of objects. The Vimalakirti Sutra says, externally, be skilled in distinguishing the attributes of objects, dharmas, and internally remain unshaken by the ultimate truth. So, again, no thought can be misunderstood as being getting rid of all thoughts. But that is a misunderstanding. So in Zazen, thoughts will arise. Now, it might be possible through intense training to voluntarily put yourself into a state where there are no thoughts. And there are times during meditation when thoughts do disappear. But in the Zen tradition, that is not the object of meditation. The object of meditation is to learn the nature of thoughts, the ephemeral nature of thoughts, and the insubstantial nature of thoughts, so that thoughts can be useful, but they don't end up using you. These dharmas with a small d they're talking that Wei talks about are thoughts, concepts, ideologies, roles. And this notion of no attachment can also be misunderstood as meaning to be sort of unengaged, dissociated, remote, which is a misunderstanding. Lack of attachment might be described more as just not letting yourself get in the way, not coming to the situation with an agenda, being free from self-centeredness so that you can see clearly what is happening, what is arising, and what is calling for a response. So that we can see clearly the roles we play, the roles of sister or brother or mother or father, son or daughter, the roles in the workplace of plumber or construction worker or doctor, lawyer, so that we can see these roles as opportunities for benefit, but not identify with them to the point that we wear them tightly around us, to wear all of them loosely, use them wisely, skillfully, and then set them aside when they are no longer needed. To play one's part without, in short, stealing the show. I think of no thoughts, no objects in a way, as being to see them, but to also see through them. As the quotation from the Vimalakirti says, be skilled in distinguishing the attributes of dharmas with a small d, and internally remain unshaken by the ultimate truth. So I think I'll stop there and I guess raise this question with a preface. Rosan Yoshida talks about the image of meditation being like wearing a robe in the mist. And as you wear the robe, the mist becomes damp and then wet. So as one sits in meditation in the morning, one wears the robe throughout the day. And over time, that meditation practice spills over into everything else and becomes a complete way of life. So, in what way do you see this practice spilling over into your life? What have you noticed? And also, do you see any downside to all of this? I haven't talked about any downside to it, but what has been your experience? Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate you all being here today. And we will go into breakout rooms and we'll be back in a few moments.